The universe was about to end, not in the dramatic exploding stars and collapsing black holes sort of way that makes for good documentaries. No, this was much worse. The universe was turning into strawberry-flavored gelatine, and nobody had asked for strawberry. "Unacceptable," thundered Coordinator Glicksnorp, slamming 3 of his 7 tentacles on the crystalline conference table. The other 4 tentacles were busy stress-eating what appeared to be luminescent popcorn. 3 star systems have already been jellified. The Andromeda sector now wobbles when you poke it. Around the table, the Galactic Crisis Management Committee sat in various states of panic. The Etherian representative, basically a sentient cloud of anxiety, was literally reigning inside the conference room. The mechanoid delegate had frozen mid-calculation, steam pouring from its processors. And the Void Walker, well, nobody really knew what the Void Walker was thinking because it existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously and communicated only through interpretive dance. "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Thrintok of the Silicon-based Alliance, her crystalline form chiming nervously, "we could try reversing the polarity of the—" "We've reversed every polarity in the known universe," Glicksnorp interrupted, his tentacles now turning an alarming shade of purple. "We've reversed the reverse. We've even reversed the reverse of the reverse, which, mathematically speaking, shouldn't even be possible." The conference room fell silent except for the gentle pitter-patter of the Etherian's anxiety rain and the distant sound of a solar system going splorp as it transformed into dessert. "There is," began Secretary Yilnax, her 6 eyes darting nervously around the room. "There is one option we haven't considered." The room temperature dropped approximately 12 degrees. Even the Void Walker stopped dancing. "You can't be serious," whispered Thrintok. "The emergency protocol," Yilnax continued, pulling out a datapad covered in so many warning stickers it looked like a cyberpunk porcupine. "Article 42, subsection B, paragraph, why would you even read this far?" Glicksnorp's tentacles went from purple to a color that didn't exist in most electromagnetic spectrums. "The humans? You want to involve the humans?" "Now, hold on," interjected the mechanoid, finally unfreezing with a sound like a computer from 1995 booting up. "The humans have been under quarantine for 3,000 years, ever since the incident." "Which incident?" asked the Etherian, dripping anxiously. "The one where they invented pineapple pizza? The one where they taught artificial intelligence to write poetry? Or the one where they figured out how to weaponize memes?" "All of them." Glicksnorp's voice had reached a pitch that made nearby glass vibrate. "They're monsters. They put milk in their tea after the water. They argue about whether a hot dog is a sandwich. They created something called reality television that nearly caused 3 civil wars in the Pegasus sector when we accidentally broadcast it." Yilnax cleared at least 3 of her throats. "Yes, but they're also the only species that ever looked at an impossible problem and said, 'Hold my beer.'" Another star system went splorp in the distance. "Fine," Glicksnorp said, deflating like a punctured space balloon. "But we're getting a professional, a soldier, a scientist, their absolute best specimen." "Already sending the retrieval coordinates," Yilnax said, typing frantically. "Locating peak human performance. Scanning. Got one. High stress tolerance, works with numbers, deals with impossible situations daily." The teleportation beam fired. Gerald Fitzgerald was having what could generously be called a day. At 52, with a receding hairline that had long since completed its strategic retreat and a gut that suggested a lasting peace treaty with vegetables had never been signed, he stood in his kitchen at 6:47 a.m., engaged in mortal combat, with a toaster that had developed what could only be described as a personality disorder. "Come on, you piece of—" Gerald muttered, jamming a butter knife into the slot for the 18th time. The toaster, a wedding gift from his ex-wife's mother, which explained a lot, had decided that today was the day it would hold his whole wheat bread hostage. He was wearing his Tuesday boxer shorts, Gerald had a system. One sock, the other was presumably wherever socks go to die, and a T-shirt that proclaimed "World's Okayest Dad," a Father's Day gift from his daughter that was both touching and concerningly accurate. The toaster sparked. Gerald jabbed harder. The toaster sparked again. And then the universe turned inside out, which, to be fair, was only the second weirdest thing that had happened to Gerald that morning. The first was discovering his cat had figured out how to order things on Amazon. One moment he was in his kitchen in suburban Ohio. The next he was standing in what appeared to be a conference room designed by someone who had only heard descriptions of conference rooms second-hand from someone who had been very, very drunk. "Behold," announced a purple tentacled creature that looked like an octopus had mated with a mood ring. "The human warrior." Gerald looked down. He was still holding the butter knife. He was still wearing one sock. His Tuesday boxers, which featured tiny dancing tacos, don't ask, were on full display. Gerald began, then stopped. He'd been an accountant for 30 years. He'd seen some things. He'd survived audit season, corporate mergers, and that one time Kevin from HR tried to implement a Fun Friday policy. He could handle this. "I want to speak to your manager," he said. The room fell silent. Deathly, cosmically, existentially silent. What?" Glixnor's tentacles twitched in confusion. "Your manager," Gerald repeated, louder and slower, as if talking to a customer service representative who'd just put him on hold for the 5th time. "You've kidnapped me. I was in the middle of something. I have a Zoom meeting at 9. My breakfast is getting cold. My cat is unsupervised and she knows my credit card number. So either you return me right now, or I want to speak to whoever's in charge here." I am in charge," Glixnorp stammered. "Really?" Gerald raised an eyebrow, a power move he'd perfected during quarterly budget reviews. "Because you look middle management at best. What's your title?" "Galactic Crisis Coordinator." Glixnorp puffed up, which was difficult to do when you're essentially a tentacled anxiety attack. "Coordinator," Gerald repeated flatly. "Not director, not president, coordinator. That's like, what, 3 steps above intern?" The Etherean made a sound that might have been a laugh. Glixnorp turned a shade of purple that suggested imminent violence. "Listen here, human." "Gerald." "What?" "My name is Gerald. Gerald Fitzgerald." "And you are?" "Coordinator Glixnorp of the—" "Glixnorp? Seriously? That sounds like someone sneezed while eating alphabet soup." Gerald looked around the room, taking in the various aliens with the same expression he used when examining particularly creative tax returns. "And the rest of you? Let me guess. Zix, QWERTY, something with too many apostrophes?" "I'm Ambassador Thrintok," said the crystalline being, sounding slightly offended. "Thrintok? Of course you are." Gerald rubbed his eyes. "Okay, look. You've clearly made some sort of mistake. I'm not a warrior, I'm an accountant. CPA, Certified Public Accountant. The most violent thing I've done this week was aggressively filing a tax extension. But the computer said you deal with impossible situations," Yilnax protested, waving her datapad. "Have you ever tried to explain cryptocurrency gains to an 80-year-old client who still thinks email is witchcraft? That's an impossible situation." Gerald looked around for a chair, found something that might have been a chair if chairs were designed by Salvador Dali having a bad dream, and sat down anyway. "Now, someone want to explain why I'm here? And more importantly, is there coffee? Because if you're advanced enough for intergalactic kidnapping, you better have coffee." "The universe is turning into gelatine!" Glixnorp exploded. "Strawberry-flavored gelatine. Reality itself is becoming dessert." Gerald paused mid-adjustment of his one sock. "Strawberry? Yes, not cherry." "What?" "No, strawberry." "Well, that's something at least. Cherry's terrible. Tastes like cough medicine." Gerald leaned back in the probably chair. "So the universe is turning into jello, and you kidnapped me because humans are monsters." Glixnorp gestured wildly with at least 5 tentacles. You're the only species classified as apocalypse adjacent. You weaponized everything, music, food, memes. You looked at the atom and thought, I bet I could split that. You looked at the internet and thought, this needs cats. You're insane. We're not insane, Gerald said defensively. We're creative. You put pineapple on pizza. Okay, that one's controversial even among humans. You invented something called social media that literally causes depression, and you keep using it. Well, yeah, but you have a sport where you hit a ball with a stick and then run away from it. Baseball's actually quite strategic if you... You created a movie where a tornado is full of sharks. Gerald paused. Okay, I'll give you Sharknado. That was pretty stupid. Secretary Yilnax stepped forward, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence like a very confused traffic light. Mr. Gerald. Fitzgerald. Mr. Fitzgerald. Or just Gerald. Not Mr. Gerald. That makes me sound like a children's TV host. Mr. Fitzgerald, Yilnax continued, we need your help. The anomaly, that's what we're calling the gelatinification phenomenon, started 3 cycles ago. It's consuming everything, planets, stars, even black holes. Have you ever seen a black hole jiggle? It's deeply disturbing. And you think I can help? How exactly? Gerald asked, still clutching his butter knife like the world's least impressive sword. Because humans are the only species that looks at impossible problems and says, hold my beer, yeah, I've heard. Gerald stood up, his one bare foot making an unfortunate squelching sound on the floor, which he chose not to think about. But I don't see how an accountant from Ohio is supposed to stop the universe from becoming dessert. Unless... He paused. Wait, you said this started 3 cycles ago? Yes, Yilnax confirmed. Define cycle. 1 complete rotation of the galactic core calendar, approximately... No, Gerald waved the butter knife dismissively. In Earth time. When did this start in Earth time? The aliens exchanged glances, or at least what Gerald assumed were glances. The Voidwalker did something with 17 dimensions that might have been a shrug. 3 of your weeks ago, Thrintok calculated, her crystalline form chiming like a very expensive wind chime. 3 weeks. Gerald's eyes narrowed. That would be October 1st, the beginning of Q4, the start of the fiscal quarter. He looked around the room. Do you people have a universal operating system, some kind of cosmic mainframe? The universal probability matrix, the mechanoid buzzed. It governs all reality-based calculations and... When was its last update? Update? The mechanoid's lights flickered in confusion. Update, Gerald said louder, as if volume would help. Software update. Patch. You know, when you fix the bugs and add new features nobody asked for. The universal probability matrix has functioned perfectly for 70 billion years. Glixnort protested. It doesn't need 70 billion years. Gerald's voice cracked like he'd just seen someone claim a yacht as a business expense. You haven't updated your operating system in 70 billion years. Do you have any idea what that means? That it's very reliable? Suggested Thrintok. That it's full of more bugs than a mattress in a cheap motel. Gerald was pacing now, his one sock making a shuffling sound that somehow made him seem more authoritative. Let me guess. About 3 weeks ago, something changed. Some new variable got introduced. Maybe a new species achieved spaceflight. Maybe someone divided by 0. Maybe someone finally asked the question, what happens if I put a USB in right the first time? And your ancient, deprecated, held together with cosmic duct tape operating system couldn't handle it. The room fell silent, except for what sounded suspiciously like the Windows XP startup sound coming from the mechanoid. But that would mean... Yilnax's 6 eyes widened in horror. The universe is experiencing a system error? Not just any system error, Gerald said, now fully in his element. This was just like explaining to Mr. Henderson why he couldn't claim his dog as a dependent. This is what we call a cascading failure. One small error compounds into another, which compounds into another, until reality itself starts BSOding. B-sod? Glicksnort pronounced carefully. Blue screen of death. It's when, never mind. The point is, your universe is crashing, and it's expressing that crash as strawberry gelatine because... Gerald paused. Actually, why strawberry gelatine? The aliens exchanged embarrassed looks. The universal probability matrix was originally programmed by the ancients, Yilnax admitted. Their favorite food was, well, strawberry gelatine, Gerald finished. So your universe's default error state is dessert. That's, he paused, considering. Actually kind of brilliant. Better than a blue screen. Can you fix it? Glicksnort demanded, tentacles writhing with anxiety. Gerald looked at his butter knife, then at the assembled aliens, then at his one-socked foot. He thought about his toaster, still holding his bread hostage. He thought about his cat, probably ordering something expensive on Amazon right now. He thought about his Zoom meeting at 9, which he was definitely going to miss. I'll need coffee, he said finally. Good coffee. Not whatever passes for coffee here. Real, earth coffee, dark roast, none of that flavored nonsense. We can transport some from Earth, Yilnax said eagerly, and I'll need access to your universal whatever matrix. Probability matrix, yes, of course. And someone's going to have to call my office and tell them I'm sick. Food poisoning. No, wait, kidney stones. Nobody questions kidney stones. We can do that. Gerald looked around the room one more time. And I want pants. Real pants, not whatever you people think pants are. Earth pants, khakis, size 36, 38 waist. That's your priority? Glicksnort sputtered. The universe is melting and you want pants? Listen, Glimpnorb, Glicksnort. Whatever. I'm not saving the universe in my Tuesday taco boxes. A man has to have some dignity. Gerald crossed his arms, butter knife still in hand. Now, are we doing this or not? The fate of the universe hung in the balance. Reality itself was dissolving into a dessert course, and somewhere in Ohio, a toaster was about to win a war of attrition against whole wheat bread. Get the human his pants, Glicksnort sighed, deflating like a purple balloon at a particularly disappointing birthday party, and may the cosmic forces help us all. 20 minutes later, Gerald stood in what the aliens called the Universal Probability Matrix Control Center, though it looked more like someone had tried to build a server room while on hallucinogens. He was wearing khakis, size 38, thank you very much, a polo shirt that said Fibonacci's Bar and Grill, where every number counts, and both socks. The coffee was surprisingly good. Apparently, the Etherians had been smuggling Earth coffee for centuries, which explained a lot about Seattle. So, Gerald said, staring at what appeared to be a cosmic keyboard made entirely of light and regret. This is your control interface. The most advanced interface in the known universe, the mechanoid proclaimed proudly. It operates on 17 different dimensional planes simultaneously. Uh-huh. Gerald took a sip of coffee. And how do you input commands? Through harmonic resonance calibrated to the frequency of thought itself. So, interpretive dance. Well, yes. Gerald set down his coffee with the careful precision of someone who'd just been told their tax return was being audited. You control the operating system of reality through interpretive dance. It's very efficient, the mechanoid protested, steam whistling from what might have been ears. It's very insane. Gerald rubbed his temples. No wonder you're having problems. Do you have any idea how many ways that can go wrong? What if someone has a muscle spasm? What if someone's having a bad day and their frequency of thought is off? What if someone just really needs to sneeze? There was that one incident, Yilnax admitted quietly, where Coordinator Glicksnort had the hiccups and accidentally created a planet made entirely of cheese. Of course there was. Gerald looked around the room. Okay, first things first. We need to access the error logs. Where do you keep those? Error logs? Thrintok chimed uncertainly. The record of what went wrong. Error messages. System failures. You know, logs. The aliens looked at each other with the universal expression of beings who've just realized they've forgotten something very, very important. The universal probability matrix doesn't make errors, Glixnorp said slowly. It's perfect. Nothing's perfect, Gerald replied automatically. That's the first rule of accounting. The second rule is that anyone who says something's perfect is either lying or hasn't looked hard enough. And the third rule is always check the logs. He paused. Actually, the third rule is don't eat sushi from a gas station, but checking logs is definitely fourth. But if there are no error logs, Yilnax's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. Then we make some. Gerald cracked his knuckles, a sound that echoed through 17 dimensions and probably traumatized the Voidwalker. Someone get me a chair, a real chair, not one of those Salvador Dali fever dreams, and show me how this interpretive dance nonsense works. What followed was perhaps the most embarrassing 45 minutes in Glixnorp's extremely long life. Gerald, a 52-year-old accountant with the flexibility of a particularly rigid 2x4, attempted to learn the subtle art of cosmic interpretive dance. No, no, no! Glixnorp's tentacles waved frantically. You need to express the essence of the query. Feel the data flow through your being. I'm feeling something flowing, Gerald muttered, attempting what he thought was a graceful arc, but looked more like someone trying to swat a fly while having a back spasm. Mostly it's regret. Perhaps if you tried to be more fluid, Thrintok suggested delicately. I haven't been fluid since 1987, Gerald replied, nearly falling over as he attempted something that might have been a pirouette if pirouettes were performed by people who'd just been tasered. This is ridiculous. There has to be a better way. This is the only way, Glixnorp insisted. The universal probability matrix responds only to the pure expression of... Gerald sneezed. The entire room flickered. Reality hiccuped. For a brief moment, everything tasted purple. What did you just do? Glixnorp shrieked. Gerald wiped his nose with a tissue that had materialized from nowhere, which was concerning. I sneezed. I told you this was a bad system. What happened? The mechanoid was buzzing like a bee in a blender. You accessed something, a hidden partition, something labeled... Its lights flickered. README TXT? A README file? Gerald perked up. Those are usually important. What does it say? The mechanoid projected the file into the air. It read, "Congratulations on finding this. If you're reading this, something's probably gone horribly wrong. The universal probability, matrix Vought 1 PAO, beta, was never meant to run this long. Seriously, 70 billion years. What's wrong with you people? There should have been updates, patches, at least a service pack. But no, you had to leave it running like that Windows XP machine in your grandmother's basement. Well, good luck with that. The ancients. P.S. The default error state is strawberry gelatine because we thought it would be funny. We were very drunk." The room fell silent. "The universe," Yilnax whispered, "is running on a beta version?" "That's been running without updates for 70 billion years, Gerald added helpfully. "I'm honestly impressed it lasted this long. Most beta software can't survive a long weekend." Glixnorp had progressed through purple past ultraviolet and into colors that required special permits to perceive. "How do we fix this?" Gerald was already doing the dance moves that had accidentally accessed the README file, except this time on purpose, which somehow made it worse. "First, we need to find the error that started this cascade. If this started 3 weeks ago..." He gyrated in what he hoped was a data-accessing manner. "There should be a log somewhere." Aha! A massive file materialized in the air, scrolling faster than anyone could read. "There!" Gerald pointed with his elbow while doing something that resembled the Macarena, having an existential crisis. 3 weeks ago. Error, division by 0 in sector." He squinted. "Sector X4Q9 Taco Tuesday. Who names these sectors?" "The ancients were very whimsical," Thrintok admitted. "They were very drunk, apparently." Gerald stopped dancing, much to everyone's relief. "Okay, so someone or something divided by 0 in that sector. The system couldn't handle it, tried to compensate, failed, and started converting everything to its default error state. Classic cascading failure. But how do we stop it? Glixnorp demanded. Gerald looked at the cosmic keyboard of light and regret. He looked at his coffee, now cold. He looked at his butter knife, which he'd somehow kept with him this entire time. And then he smiled the smile of every IT person who'd ever been asked to fix a problem that someone else had been making worse for years. Have you tried turning it off and on again? The silence that followed could have been measured in parsecs. You want to... Glixnorp's voice had transcended pitch and entered the realm of pure psychic anguish. Turn off the universe, not the universe, Gerald corrected, doing finger quotes that probably violated several laws of physics. Just the universal probability matrix. Restart it, clear the cache, dump the bad processes, start fresh. But if we turn off the universal probability matrix, the mechanoid calculated frantically, reality will cease to have probability. Everything will become equally likely and unlikely simultaneously. Cats will both exist and not exist. Effect might come before cause. Pineapple might spontaneously appear on all pizza. For how long? Gerald asked. What? How long would it take to restart? A few seconds? A minute? The mechanoid's lights blinked rapidly. Approximately 0.00001 seconds, but so for 1/10,000,000th of a second reality gets a bit weird. Gerald shrugged. Honestly, after the year I've had, that sounds like a Tuesday. But the risk, Yilnax protested, all six eyes wide with horror. The risk, Gerald said, putting on his serious accountant voice, the one he used when explaining to clients why they couldn't write off their vacation to Hawaii as a business expense, is that for 1/10,000,000th of a second, things get weird. The certainty is that if we don't do something, the entire universe becomes strawberry jello. I don't know about you, but I'm not spending eternity as a dessert topping. There must be another way, Glixnorp insisted. Something less human. Oh, there are other ways, Gerald admitted, sitting down in his real chair with an audible sigh of relief. We could go through 70 billion years of code, line by line, finding every bug, every memory leak, every place where someone used a Goto statement because they were lazy. Should only take us, about 800 trillion years. Of course, the universe will be completely gelatinized by next Thursday, but hey, at least we'll be thorough. Another star system went splorp in the distance, the sound somehow both wet and cosmic. Or, Gerald continued, we could try to patch the specific error. But that's like putting a band-aid on a severed artery. Sure, it might stop the bleeding for about 3 seconds, but then you've got bigger problems, and blood everywhere, very messy. Those are our only options, Thrintok chimed mournfully. Well, there's always option C, Gerald said, taking a sip of his cold coffee and immediately regretting it. We accept our fate and learn to live as sentient jello. I hear the gelatine sector has great health care. That's not funny, Glixnorp roared. It's a little funny, the Etherian said quietly, still dripping but now with what might have been amusement. Gerald stood up, brushing imaginary dust off his khakis. Look, I get it. You're scared. Turning off the thing that keeps reality running is like... He paused, searching for an analogy these cosmic beings would understand. It's like doing heart surgery on yourself while skydiving, during an earthquake, on a Tuesday. Why is Tuesday significant? The Voidwalker asked through interpretive dance. Tuesdays are always weird. It's a universal constant, like the speed of light, or the fact that the USB cable never goes in right the first time. Gerald walked over to the cosmic keyboard. But here's the thing about humans that makes us, as you so eloquently put it, monsters. We're really, really good at doing stupid things that somehow work. That's not reassuring, Glixnorp muttered. It's not supposed to be reassuring, it's supposed to be true. Gerald started doing the dance he'd learned, but with more confidence now, like a dad at a wedding who'd just discovered the open bar. We looked at the ocean and thought, bet I could float on that. We looked at the sky and thought, bet I could fly through that. We looked at the moon and thought, bet I could stand on that. And when people told us we were crazy, we did it anyway. Usually with duct tape and a frankly disturbing amount of optimism. But this is the universe. Glixnorp's tentacles were doing things that tentacles really shouldn't be able to do. And I'm an accountant, Gerald shot back. You think I dreamed of this when I was studying depreciation tables? You think little Gerald Fitzgerald sat in his dorm room thinking, one day I'll save reality itself from becoming a dessert course? No, I wanted to be a jazz musician, but I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket with a lid on it, so here we are. He was really dancing now, accessing files and protocols with movements that looked like a cross between the chicken dance and someone being electrocuted in slow motion. There! He pointed at a massive red button that had appeared in the air because, of course, there was a big red button. There's always a big red button. The Universal Probability Matrix Master Reset. All we have to do is press it. We can't! Yilnak stepped forward, all 6 eyes gleaming with tears or possibly optical fluid. The Galactic Council must vote. There are procedures, forms to fill out, environmental impact studies. Environmental impact studies? Gerald's voice cracked like it hadn't since puberty. The environment is turning into jello. What's to study? Protocol must be followed, Glixnorp insisted, pulling out a manual the size of a small moon. Section 8. 746, subsection J, paragraph 12, clearly states that any action affecting the fundamental nature of reality requires a 2/3 majority vote, a waiting period of no less than 17 cycles, and a signature from someone whose name contains at least 3 apostrophes. Gerald stared at the manual. He stared at the big red button. He stared at his butter knife, still somehow in his hand. And then he did what humans do best. He improvised. "Oh, would you look at that?" he said loudly, pointing at absolutely nothing with his butter knife. "A distraction." Every single alien in the room turned to look. Gerald slapped the button. Reality ended. And then, 0.01 seconds later, it began again. The thing about experiencing the cessation and restart of reality is that it's surprisingly mundane. Gerald had expected something dramatic, flashing lights, cosmic sirens, maybe some Wagner playing in the background. Instead, it was like that moment when you're not sure if you just blinked or had a micro nap. One moment everything was, then it wasn't, then it was again, and his coffee was somehow hot. What? Glixnorp looked around, tentacles twitching. What just happened? I fixed it, Gerald said simply, taking a sip of his mysteriously reheated coffee. You're welcome. The mechanoid was buzzing frantically, scanning through data streams. The gelatinification has stopped. Reality is stable. The universal probability matrix is updating? Sure enough. Floating in the air was a progress bar, the universal symbol of "Please wait while we make your life temporarily worse." It read, "Installing Universe 2.0. Time remaining, 47 seconds. Please do not turn off your reality during this update." "It's updating itself?" Yilnax whispered in awe. "Auto-update was probably always on," Gerald explained, sitting back down in his chair. "It just needed to be turned off and on again for the system to realize it hadn't been updated in 70 billion years. Fair warning, it's probably going to install a bunch of features you don't want and move all your settings around." "But you just..." Glixnorp sputtered, his color cycling through shades of disbelief. "You press the button, without authorization, without forms, without a committee." "Yep." Gerald took another sip of coffee. "That's what we humans call executive decision-making, also known as doing what needs to be done while everyone else is still arguing about it." "But the rules!" Glixnorp pulled out his massive manual, flipping through it desperately. "The procedures." "Let me tell you something about rules," Gerald said, setting down his coffee and leaning forward in his chair. "Rules are great. I love rules. I'm an accountant. Rules are literally my job. But you know what I learned in 30 years of dealing with tax codes, corporate policies, and bureaucratic nonsense? Sometimes the rules are stupid. Blasphemy! Glixnorp shrieked. It's truth, Gerald countered. Your rule book says you need a committee vote to save the universe. That's not a rule. That's a suicide pact written by someone who never faced an actual crisis. You know what humans do with stupid rules? We break them. And then, if it works out, we say we were being innovative and thinking outside the box. If it doesn't work out, we blame Kevin from HR. Who's Kevin? Thrintok asked. Everyone has a Kevin from HR. It's another universal constant. The progress bar dinged. Update complete. Thank you for updating to Universe 2.0. New features include improved quantum mechanics, faster black holes, and dark matter that actually makes sense. Please note, some of your previous settings may have changed. Have a probable day. The mechanoid was scanning the new system. It's working perfectly. No errors, no cascading failures, no spontaneous gelatinification. The universe is saved. Great, Gerald said, standing up and stretching. Can I go home now? My cat's probably ordered half of Amazon by now. Go home! Glixnorp's tentacles went rigid. You just saved the universe with the cosmic equivalent of hitting it with a hammer. You can't just leave. Watch me, Gerald said, already looking around for the teleporter or whatever they'd used to kidnap him. I did what you asked. Universe saved, reality stable, no more Jello apocalypse, transaction complete. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a toaster to defeat and a Zoom meeting to miss. But Yilnax's 6 eyes were blinking rapidly, like she was trying to process a particularly complex spreadsheet. You're the most qualified being in the universe to handle cosmic IT problems. We need you. I'm an accountant, Gerald repeated for what felt like the 1,000th time. The only reason I could fix this was because your system was running on the same principle as every badly maintained QuickBooks installation I've ever seen. Ignored for too long and held together by prayer and digital duct tape. Then stay and teach us, Thrintok chimed desperately. Show us the human ways of, what did you call it, turning things off and on again. Gerald paused. He looked at the aliens. These cosmic beings who controlled the fate of galaxies, but couldn't figure out that maybe, just maybe, a 70-billion-year-old operating system might need an update. They looked back at him with various numbers of eyes, all filled with the universal expression of beings who just realized they were cosmic idiots. You want me to teach you, Gerald said slowly, how to be human. Yes, they all said in unison, except for the Voidwalker who expressed agreement through what appeared to be interdimensional jazz hands. Gerald rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture that somehow conveyed exhaustion across all species barriers. Being human isn't about the technical stuff. It's about, he paused, searching for words. It's about looking at impossible situations and saying, well, it can't get worse. And then when it does get worse, saying, well, at least it's interesting. That's it? Glixnorp asked incredulously. No, that's not it. Gerald was pacing now, his khakis making swishing sounds that echoed through dimensions. It's about duct tape. Not literal duct tape, although we do use a lot of that, but the concept of duct tape. The idea that anything can be fixed if you're creative enough, stubborn enough, or desperate enough. He pointed at the mechanoid. You! When was the last time you tried something that wasn't in the manual? Never. That would be illogical. Exactly. Humans are illogical. We eat food we know is bad for us because it tastes good. We adopt animals that could kill us and call them Mr. Whiskers. We fall in love with people who are completely wrong for us and write songs about it. We're gloriously stupid, and that's what makes us brilliant. The Etherian had stopped dripping and was now more of a light mist of fascination. But how does that help with cosmic crises? Because, Gerald said, warming to his theme like an accountant explaining why receipts are important, when you're not afraid of being stupid, you'll try anything. And sometimes Sometimes the stupid thing is the right thing. Like right now, the smart thing would be for me to stay here, help you set up proper IT protocols, maybe establish a regular update schedule. But the human thing? The human thing is for me to go home, defeat my toaster, apologize to my cat and pretend this never happened. That makes no sense, Glixnor protested. Exactly. Gerald pointed his butter knife at the coordinator triumphantly. It makes no sense, and that's why it's perfect. You want to know the secret to being human. Stop making sense. The universe doesn't make sense. It's made of mostly nothing, held together by forces we don't understand, expanding into something that doesn't exist yet. And you're worried about protocol. The room fell silent. Even the gentle hum of the Universal Probability Matrix 2.0 seemed to pause in respect for the profound stupidity of what Gerald had just said. So you're saying, Yilnak said slowly, that the secret to human success is being idiots? Confident idiots, Gerald corrected. There's a difference. An idiot says, I don't know what I'm doing. A confident idiot says, I don't know what I'm doing, but watch this. Suddenly, an alarm started blaring, not a normal alarm. This was the kind of alarm that suggested something had gone wrong on a cosmic scale. Again. What now? Glixnorp's tentacles were having what could only be described as a cosmic panic attack. The mechanoid was scanning frantically. It's impossible. The Universal Probability Matrix 2.0 is working perfectly, but something's wrong with what? Everyone shouted. With Earth! The mechanoid projected a hologram of Gerald's home planet. It was blinking. Not the lights on it. The entire planet was blinking like a turn signal on a cosmic Toyota. What did you do? Glixnorp rounded on Gerald. Me! I've been here! Unless... Gerald's eyes widened. Oh no! Oh, no. What time is it on Earth? 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the mechanoid reported. My Zoom meeting! Gerald slapped his forehead. I was supposed to be presenting the quarterly reports. The system must have auto-logged me in, and, oh God, my camera's probably on. How would that cause your planet to blink? Yilnax demanded. You don't understand. Gerald was genuinely panicking now, more than he had when facing universal gelatinification. It's the Jenkins account. They're our biggest client. If they see I'm not there but my camera's on, showing my empty kitchen with my cat probably doing something embarrassing, they'll pull their entire portfolio. The company will collapse. The economy will tank. And... He paused, a horrible realization dawning on his face. And what? Glixnorp screamed. And my ex-wife's lawyer will use it as evidence that I'm an unreliable father in the custody hearing next week. The alien stared at him. Your planet is having a reality crisis because of a custody hearing. Glixnorp's color had transcended purple and entered a spectrum of disbelief that required advanced mathematics to perceive. Not because of it. Gerald was already doing the interpretive dance to access Earth systems. But my laptop is still logged into the company mainframe, which is connected to the Pentagon because of that weird contract we have, which is connected to... Oh, crap. What? My cat! Gerald was dancing frantically now, like someone trying to perform Swan Lake while being attacked by bees. She figured out how to order things on Amazon. If she's been unsupervised for 3 hours with my laptop open... The mechanoid pulled up Earth's internet traffic. The entire screen was filled with orders for cat toys, laser pointers, and something called Gourmet Tuna Variety Pack. Bulk wholesale. Your cat, Thrintook said slowly, is ordering things online. She's very smart, Gerald defended, still dancing. She figured out one-click ordering, but that's not the problem. The problem is that my credit card is linked to my company card because of that mix-up with accounting last month, which means she's technically making purchases on a Department of Defense subcontractor's expense account, which is probably triggering all sorts of automated security protocols. Sure enough, the hologram showed multiple military satellites repositioning themselves, all focused on Gerald's house in suburban Ohio. They think my cat is a terrorist, Gerald wailed. Your planet's military is about to attack your house because your pet is shopping online. Even the Voidwalker had stopped existing in 17 dimensions to stare in disbelief. Welcome to Earth, Gerald said desperately, where we have weapons that can destroy cities, but can't figure out if a cat is a security threat. Can you teleport me back now? But the planetary blinking, that's probably just the NSA trying to turn Earth off and on again. They must have heard it worked for the universe. Please! Glixnorp looked at the other aliens. They all shrugged, nodded, or in the Voidwalker's case did something with space-time that suggested agreement. Fine! Glixnorp gestured at the teleportation pad. But when your planet explodes because of a cat, don't blame us. If my planet explodes because of Princess Whiskers III, at least it'll be the most human way possible to go. Gerald jumped onto the pad. Now send me back! The last thing he heard before the universe inverted again was Yilnak saying, "Did he say Princess Whiskers III? What happened to the first two?" Gerald materialized in his kitchen just as his laptop screen showed his boss saying, "And if Fitzgerald isn't here in the next 30 seconds, he's fired." Princess Whiskers III was sitting on the keyboard, having just ordered what appeared to be an entire pallet of catnip and a small yacht. The toaster had finally released his bread, though it was now charcoal. His zoom camera was indeed on, showing him materializing from thin air in his khakis and polo shirt, still holding a butter knife. The entire executive board of his company stared at him through the screen. "Gerald," his boss said slowly, "did you just appear out of nowhere?" Gerald looked at the screen, looked at his cat, looked at the military satellites visible through his kitchen window, all pointed at his house, looked at the butter knife in his hand. "I had technical difficulties," he said. "Technical difficulties," his boss repeated flatly. "Very technical, very difficult." Gerald sat down at his laptop, gently moving Princess Whiskers aside. She meowed in protest, but settled for sitting on his lap, purring like a small, fuzzy engine of chaos. "But I've got them sorted now. Shall we discuss the Jenkins account?" "The Jenkins account," his boss said, still staring. "Right. Gerald, are those military satellites outside your window?" "Probably. There was a small issue with online shopping fraud. It's being resolved." Gerald pulled up his quarterly reports, acting like this was completely normal. "Now, as you can see from slide 1, our profit margins have increased by 12%. He continued presenting, ignoring the fact that his kitchen was slowly filling with FBI agents, that Princess Whiskers had somehow ordered another 3 pallets of cat toys while sitting on his lap, and that his toaster was now making what could only be described as threatening noises. Just another Tuesday for Gerald Fitzgerald, the most average human in existence. The presentation went surprisingly well, all things considered. The FBI agents were very polite, waiting until he'd finished explaining the depreciation schedules before asking why his cat had attempted to purchase a decommissioned aircraft carrier. The Jenkins account was retained, though Mr. Jenkins himself seemed more interested in how Gerald had teleported than in the quarterly figures, and his boss, after a long silence, had simply said, "Fitzgerald, take the rest of the day off, and maybe get a new cat." It was now 2 p.m. Gerald was sitting in his kitchen, which had been thoroughly searched, scanned, and deemed weird but not threatening by various 3-letter agencies. Princess Whiskers III had been given a stern talking to by a Homeland Security agent, which she had ignored with the regal disdain that only a cat can achieve. The toaster had been classified as a domestic appliance of interest and was being monitored. Gerald was on his 4th cup of coffee and his 3rd attempt to explain to his ex-wife why there were news helicopters circling their daughter's school. "No, Linda, I didn't join a cult. No, it's not a midlife crisis. Yes, I know this looks bad for the custody hearing. No, I can't explain why the Pentagon thinks Princess Whiskers is a terrorist mastermind." That's when the kitchen started glowing again. "Oh, come on!" Gerald shouted at the ceiling. "I just got the FBI to leave. Yilnax materialized in his kitchen, all six eyes blinking rapidly. "Mr. Fitzgerald, we need your help." "No." Gerald stood up, pointing his butter knife, which he'd kept as a souvenir, at the alien. "I saved your universe. I missed my meeting. My cat is on a watch list. I'm done." But the Universe 2.0 update included new features we don't understand. Yilnax pulled out what looked like a cosmic iPad. "There's something called cookies that keeps asking for acceptance, a firewall that's literally made of fire, and something called two-factor authentication that requires us to verify our existence every time we want to exist." Gerald stared at her. "The universe now has two-factor authentication." "Yes, and we don't have phones to receive the verification codes." "Then how do you—" Gerald stopped. "You know what? I don't want to know." He sat back down. "Fix it yourself." "We tried." Glixnorp attempted to bypass it and accidentally deleted gravity from Sector 5. He deleted gravity. "We put it back, mostly. It's a bit sideways now, but the locals seem to like it better." Yilnax stepped forward, her alien features somehow managing to convey desperation. "Please, we need someone who understands both cosmic reality and terrible user interface design." "That's—" Gerald paused. "Actually, that's literally my job description." "Huh." Princess Whiskers III jumped onto the counter and meowed at Yilnax. The alien and the cat stared at each other for a long moment. "Your companion beast is very wise," Yilnax said solemnly. "She's really not. She once got stuck in a paper bag for 3 hours. Gerald rubbed his temples. "What did she say?" "She demands tribute in exchange for your services." "Of course she does." Gerald looked at his cat. "What kind of tribute?" Princess Whiskers meowed again. "She wants the tuna from the Proxima Centauri system," Yilnax translated. "Apparently, it's the only tuna in the universe that meets her standards." "You can understand her?" "All cats are slightly psychic. Didn't you know?" Gerald looked at Princess Whiskers, who was now washing her paw with an air of smug satisfaction. "That explains so much." Another alarm started blaring from Yilnax's cosmic iPad. "Oh no!" She was looking at the screen in horror. "The universe too!" "IRA wants to update again. It says it's a critical security patch." "When does it want to update?" "In 30 seconds. And if you don't update, it says the universe will be vulnerable to—" She squinted at the screen. "Cosmic malware and interdimensional phishing attacks." Gerald stood up so fast his chair fell over. "We need to go now. If there's one thing worse than an update, it's a security update. Those always break everything. But you said updates were good. Updates are good. Security updates are necessary. But they're also terrible and will make everything worse before they make it better. It's another human paradox." He grabbed his butter knife. "Teleport us now. What about your planet's authorities?" Gerald looked out the window. 3 FBI agents were setting up a barbecue in his backyard. One waved. "They'll be fine. Bob makes great burgers." He grabbed Princess Whiskers. "We're bringing the cat." "What? Why?" "Because if I leave her alone again, she'll probably buy the moon." The teleportation beam engulfed them just as Gerald's laptop dinged with another Amazon order confirmation. This time, Princess Whiskers had somehow purchased 12 atmospheric processors and a subscription to galactic Netflix. Back in the Universal Probability Matrix Control Center, chaos reigned. The cosmic keyboard was flashing urgent warnings in colors that didn't exist. Glixnorp was tangled in his own tentacles from attempting an emergency shutdown dance. The mechanoid was making dial-up internet noises, which was concerning, and the Void Walker was flickering between dimensions so fast it looked like cosmic strobe lighting. 15 seconds until auto-update!" Thrintok chimed in panic. Gerald set Princess Whiskers down on the probably chair. She immediately made herself comfortable and began judging everyone in the room with the intensity only a cat could achieve. "Okay, first rule of security updates," Gerald said, already beginning his interpretive dance. Never let them auto-install. They always pick the worst possible time. He gyrated frantically, accessing the update settings. There! Postponed for 1 hour. That gives us time to prepare. Prepare how? Glixnorp had finally untangled himself, though 2 tentacles were still tied in a bow. We back up everything important, clear the cache, make sure nothing critical is running, and most importantly, Gerald paused dramatically, we make coffee. Lots of coffee. This is your solution. Caffeine. You got a better idea? Because in my experience, every major IT disaster is survived purely on caffeine, spite, and the desperate hope that maybe this time it'll work right the first time. Gerald looked around. It never does, but the hope is important. The Etherian, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. The humans, they're insane. Yes, everyone agreed. But, the Etherian continued, their insanity works. They fix the universe with the equivalent of a cosmic reset button. Perhaps we should listen to the insane accountant and his psychic terrorist cat. Princess Whiskers meowed approvingly. She says thank you, Yilnax translated, then paused. Also, she's ordering something called interdimensional laser pointers on your credit card. Of course she is. Gerald sighed and started his dance again. All right, everyone watch closely. I'm going to teach you the most important human IT skill, pretending you know what you're doing while frantically Googling the solution. But we don't have Google here, Thrintok protested. Then we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way, Gerald said grimly. We're going to read the actual manual. The room gasped in horror. No one reads the manual, Glixnorp protested. It's against the natural order. Exactly, which is why it might actually work. Gerald pulled up the Universe 2, Edro documentation, which materialized as a book roughly the size of a small planet. Oh good, it's in Comic Sans. The ancients really were drunk. For the next 45 minutes, Gerald taught the assembled aliens the sacred human art of skimming documentation while pretending to understand it, nodding knowingly at things that made no sense and marking everything as known issue, will fix in next release. This is madness, the mechanoid buzzed. No, Gerald corrected, highlighting another incomprehensible section about quantum probability flux capacitors. This is documentation. Madness would be actually understanding it. Princess Whiskers, meanwhile, had somehow gained administrative access to the universal probability matrix and was batting at reality itself, like it was a cosmic ball of yarn. Each swipe caused minor hiccups. A star would sneeze, a black hole would hiccup, a planet would briefly turn plaid. Should we stop her? Yilnax asked nervously. Are you kidding? She's actually fixing things. Gerald pointed at the screen. Look, she just resolved 17 conflicts in the space-time continuum by walking across the keyboard. How is that possible? It's a cat thing. They exist partially outside normal physics anyway. Why do you think they always land on their feet? It's not balance. They're literally editing reality on the way down. The update timer ticked down to 5 minutes. Okay, everyone ready? Gerald asked, looking around the room. Remember, when the update starts, everything will go wrong. This is normal. Do not panic. Do not try to fix it while it's updating. And whatever you do, do not unplug the universe. What if it gets stuck at 99%? Thrintok asked fearfully. Then we wait, even if it takes 17 hours, especially if it takes 17 hours. The worst thing you can do is interrupt an update because you think it's frozen. Gerald took a deep breath. Trust the process, even when the process is stupid. The timer hit 0. Universe 2.01 security update initializing. Please do not exist during this process. Don't exist, Glixnorp shrieked. How do we not exist? It's a figure of speech, Gerald said, though he wasn't entirely sure. Just hold on and think non-existent thoughts. Reality began to update. It was exactly as bad as Gerald had predicted, and somehow worse. The laws of physics started reinstalling in the wrong order. Effect came before cause. Matter forgot what it was supposed to be, and for one terrifying moment, everything tasted like Wednesday. 10% complete, the mechanoid reported, his voice now sounding like a kazoo. Estimated time remaining, 4 minutes. No wait, 3 years. No wait, -7. No wait. Stop looking at it, Gerald commanded. You're observing it, which changes the outcome. It's like a quantum progress bar. Princess Whiskers yawned and stretched, completely unaffected by the reality chaos around her. She'd found a sunbeam that somehow existed, despite there being no sun in the control center, and was now napping in it. How is she so calm? Yilnax demanded, 2 of her eyes temporarily existing in last Thursday. She's a cat. From her perspective, reality is always this weird. Gerald gripped his butter knife like a talisman. Just remember, this is temporary, probably, mostly. Look, at least we're not turning into jello. Small comfort. Glixnorp's tentacles were each experiencing a different time zone. 50% complete, the mechanoid announced, now sounding like a combination of smooth jazz and existential dread. That's when the error messages started. Warning, reality, XE has stopped responding. Would you like to send an error report to the ancients? No, Gerald shouted, dancing frantically to dismiss the pop-up. Never send error reports. They go nowhere and just slow everything down. Warning, quantum drivers out of date. Search for updated drivers? Definitely no. Warning, your universe license will expire in 2008-47, 291 days. Please renew now. Oh, for the love of... Gerald performed what could only be described as an aggressive tap dance routine to close all the pop-ups. This is why you never buy the extended warranty. 75% complete, the mechanoid wheezed, now communicating entirely through interpretive static. The room was starting to stabilize, reality slowly remembering what it was supposed to be doing. Colors returned to their proper wavelengths, gravity remembered which way was down, and time agreed to flow in mostly one direction. 90% complete. Everyone held their breath, or whatever they used for respiration. 95%. Gerald gripped his butter knife tighter. 99%. Everything stopped. The progress bar sat at 99%, not moving, not even pretending to move. Just sitting there, mocking them. It's stuck, Glixnorp whispered in horror. It's not stuck, Gerald said through gritted teeth. It's thinking. About what? About whether it wants to work properly or ruin our entire day. This is the moment where the update decides if it's going to be merciful or if it's going to crash everything and make us start over. They waited, and waited, and waited. Princess Whiskers woke up, stretched, walked over to the cosmic keyboard and sat on it. Update complete. Thank you for choosing Universe 2.01. Reality will now restart. Everything blinked out of existence for a moment, then came back online. Did your cat just fix the update by sitting on it? Thrintok asked in awe. Probably, Gerald said, scratching Princess Whiskers behind the ears. Cats have a mystical relationship with keyboards. It's how they assert dominance over technology. The mechanoid was running diagnostics. Everything's working, better than before. The security vulnerabilities are patched, the firewall is now only metaphorically on fire, and the two-factor authentication now accepts existing as sufficient verification. Great! Gerald stood up, gathering Princess Whiskers. Then my work here is done. Again. Wait! Glixnorp raised a tentacle. What if there are more updates? What if something else goes wrong? Gerald looked at the assembled aliens, these beings who controlled the fate of the universe but couldn't handle a simple software update. Then he looked at Princess Whiskers, who had somehow ordered them all matching T-shirts that said, "I survived Universe 2.01, and all I got was this lousy shirt," while he wasn't looking. "You know what?" Gerald said. "Give me a communicator or something. Next time something goes catastrophically wrong, call me." "Really?" Yilnax's 6 eyes lit up. Yeah, but there are conditions. 1. I work from home. I'm not commuting to the Cosmic Control Center every day. 2. I get paid in coffee. Good coffee. 3. Princess Whiskers gets all the Proxima Centauri tuna she wants. Princess Whiskers meowed approvingly. 4. Gerald continued. No calling me on Tuesdays unless the universe is literally ending. Tuesdays are already weird enough. And 5, someone needs to explain to my ex-wife why I'm now an intergalactic IT consultant, because I'm not having that conversation. Deal! Glixnorp extended a tentacle to shake, realized Gerald didn't have tentacles, and settled for an awkward pat on the shoulder. Oh, and one more thing, Gerald added. You need to set up automatic backups. Daily. I don't care if each backup is the size of 17 galaxies. You need backups. Because next time Princess Whiskers might not be around to fix things by sitting on them. Understood? Gerald was about to ask to be teleported home when another alarm started blaring. But this one was different. Instead of cosmic panic, it sounded almost cheerful. What now? Gerald sighed. It's a message, the mechanoid said, projecting it into the air. From the Universe 2.0.1 itself? The message read, "Thank you for updating. As a reward for being the first civilization to successfully update in 70 billion years, you've been selected for our beta program. Universe 3.0 Early Access starts in 1 week. Features include multiversal connectivity, quantum social media, and dark matter that actually does something. Would you like to register?" Everyone turned to look at Gerald. "Don't you dare click yes," he warned. Glixnorp's tentacle was already moving toward the Register Now button. "I said don't click. Congratulations, you're now registered for Universe 3.0 Beta. As a bonus, you've been automatically subscribed to cosmic notifications, reality newsletters, and interdimensional spam." Gerald facepalmed so hard it probably registered on several seismic monitors back on Earth. "You clicked yes. You actually clicked yes. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "But it said we were selected," Glixnorp protested. "Everyone gets selected for beta programs. It's not special. It's a trap." Gerald was pacing now, his khakis swishing angrily. "Beta versions are buggy, unstable, and always break things that were working fine. We just got the universe stable, and you signed up to break it again." Princess Whiskers meowed disapprovingly at Glixnorp. "She says you're an idiot," Yilnax translated. "Also, she's upgraded her Amazon Prime membership to Amazon Galactic." "Of course she has," Gerald muttered. "Okay, damage control time, we need to—" Another message popped up. "Universe 3.0 Beta mandatory installation begins in 6 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes. This installation cannot be cancelled, postponed, or avoided. Existence is mandatory during installation. Have a probable day." Gerald stared at the message, then at the aliens, then at Princess Whiskers, who was now somehow wearing a tiny T-shirt that said Beta Tester, despite no one seeing her put it on. "1 week," he said flatly. "We have 1 week to prepare the entire universe for a beta installation that we can't avoid." "Can't you just turn it off and on again?" Thrintok asked hopefully. "This isn't something you can turn off and on again. This is like—" Gerald struggled for an analogy. "This is like performing surgery while skydiving into a volcano during an earthquake on a Tuesday while your ex-wife's lawyer is calling." "That's very specific," the Etherean noted. "I'm having a day, okay?" Gerald took a deep breath. All right, we can handle this. Humans have survived Windows Vista. We can survive Universe 3.0 Beta." "What's Windows Vista?" Glixnorp asked. "Something so terrible we don't speak of it." Gerald pulled up the cosmic keyboard. "First things first, we need to back up everything. And I mean everything. Every star, every planet, every weird little quantum anomaly. If Universe 3.0 crashes, we need to be able to restore from backup. That will take massive amounts of storage," the mechanoid calculated. "Where would we even put it all?" Gerald looked at Princess Whiskers, who was now browsing what appeared to be interdimensional real estate listings on his credit card. "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." "Why?" "Because it involves my cat buying an entire empty dimension on Amazon." Everyone stared at Princess Whiskers, who looked back with the serene confidence of a creature that had just added one slightly used dimension, good condition, some assembly required, to her cart. "Your cat is going to buy a dimension?" Glixnorp's tentacles were tying themselves into knots again. "She's already bought 12 interdimensional laser pointers, a subscription to every streaming service in the galaxy, and something called a quantum scratching post." The Gerald checked his phone, which somehow had signal despite being in a cosmic control center. "My credit card company just called to ask if I'm aware someone's purchasing reality itself in installments." Princess Whiskers purred and clicked. "Buy now." A notification popped up. "Congratulations! You've purchased the Dimension X storage solution. Your empty dimension will be delivered in 3 to 5 business cycles. Prime members get free shipping." "Well," Gerald said, "at least the shipping is free." The next 6 days were, to put it mildly, intense. Gerald had essentially moved into the Universal Probability Matrix control center, though he insisted on bringing his coffee maker, his ergonomic chair from Earth. "If I'm saving the universe, I'm doing it without back pain," and a litter box for Princess Whiskers that somehow existed in 4 dimensions simultaneously. The backup process was complicated. "No, no, no!" Gerald shouted at Glixnorp for the 100th time. "You can't just copy and paste reality. You need to maintain the file structure. Do you want to restore the universe and have all the black holes in the wrong place? They're black holes. Nobody can see them anyway." "That's not the point. The point is—" Gerald was interrupted by Princess Whiskers, who had just sent him an alert that their dimension had been delivered. "Dimension X has arrived," Yilnax announced. "It's completely empty, just an infinite void of storage space." "Perfect!" Gerald began the transfer process. "Start backing up everything, and I mean everything. Every atom, every thought, every bad decision Glixnorp has ever made." "That will take forever," Glixnorp protested. "We have 6 days. Well, 5 now. Well, 4 3/4, because Princess Whiskers accidentally initiated a partial backup of the entire concept of Thursdays." Gerald looked at his cat, who was now wearing a tiny hard hat that said Site Supervisor. How are you even doing these things?" Princess Whiskers merely purled and knocked a coffee mug off the cosmic console, somehow triggering a backup of all coffee in existence. Day 3 of preparations, and things were getting weird. The universe, apparently aware it was about to be updated, had started glitching in small ways. Gravity occasionally forgot which way was down. Time sometimes flowed sideways, and for 1 terrifying hour, everything rhymed. "This is normal," Gerald insisted, though he was sweating through his polo shirt, which now said, "I'm with stupid," with arrows pointing in every direction. "Systems always act up before major updates. It's like they know." "The universe is sentient?" Thrintok chimed in alarm. "No, maybe. Look, I don't know. I'm an accountant, not a philosopher." Gerald was typing frantically while Princess Whiskers supervised by sitting on his hands. "The point is, we need to expect the unexpected, and then expect the unexpected to be worse than we expected." By day 4, they'd backed up approximately 67% of reality. The problem was, reality kept changing while they were backing it up. "We've backed up the Andromeda Galaxy 17 times. The mechanoid buzzed in frustration. "It keeps evolving. Then we keep backing up." Gerald had consumed so much coffee he was vibrating at a frequency that technically qualified as a new form of matter. "This is what we call incremental backups. We capture the changes as they happen." "This is insane," Glixnorp wailed. "Welcome to IT," Gerald shouted back, "where everything is insane and the error messages don't matter." Princess Whiskers, meanwhile, had somehow become the project manager. She'd created a complex system of colored laser dots that indicated which sectors needed backing up, which were complete, and which were what she called mice priority. Nobody knew what that meant, but those sectors backed up really fast. Day 5. 24 hours until Universe 3.0 beta. The backup was at 94%, but they'd hit a snag. "We can't back up Sector Z Alpha 9, Yilnax reported, 4 of her eyes crying while the other 2 remained professionally composed. "It says it's corrupted." "Corrupted how?" Gerald abandoned his 16th cup of coffee to look at the screen. It says the sector contains a paradox that makes it impossible to copy. Something about," she squinted, "a planet where the inhabitants invented time travel, went back in time to prevent themselves from inventing time travel, which meant they never invented it, which meant they did invent it, which meant a temporal paradox," Gerald groaned. "Of course there's a temporal paradox. There's always a temporal paradox." He looked at Princess Whiskers. "Any ideas?" Princess Whiskers walked across the keyboard, somehow typing, "Ignore paradox, true." The backup resumed. "How did that work?" Thrintok demanded. "Never question the cat," Gerald said solemnly. "The cat knows things we don't understand." 12 hours until update. The universe was now actively rebelling. Stars were flickering like bad fluorescent lights. Planets were randomly switching orbits like cosmic musical chairs, and somewhere in the distance, an entire galaxy had turned into smooth jazz. "Final checks," Gerald announced, his eye twitching from caffeine overdose. "Backup status?" 99.7% complete, the mechanoid reported. The remaining 0.3% appears to be actively refusing to be backed up. It's mostly DMV offices and hospital waiting rooms. "Leave them. Nobody will miss those." Gerald pulled up the update notification. "Okay, Universe 3.0 beta features multiversal connectivity. What does that even mean?" "It means," Yilnax read from her cosmic iPad, "we'll be connected to alternate versions of our universe. We can communicate and share data with parallel realities." "Oh, good," Gerald said sarcastically, "because one universe wasn't complicated enough. Now we need to deal with infinite versions of Glixnorp." "Hey," Glixnorp protested, "quantum social media." Gerald continued reading. "The ability to like, share, and comment on events before, during, and after they happen. That's going to end well. And dark matter functionality. Finally, dark matter will have an actual purpose beyond being mysterious." "What will it do?" Thrintok asked. "It doesn't say. Just shows a winky face emoji." Gerald rubbed his eyes. The ancients were not just drunk. They were plastered. 6 hours until update. Gerald had gathered everyone in the control room for final preparations. Even the Void Walker had consolidated into fewer dimensions for the occasion. "All right, listen up!" Gerald stood on his chair, partly for dramatic effect and partly because Princess Whiskers had claimed the floor as her domain. "In 6 hours, the universe gets a major update we can't stop. Based on my experience with beta software, here's what to expect." He pulled up a list he'd written on what appeared to be cosmic toilet paper. Don't ask. "First, everything that works now will break. Everything that's broken will either get fixed or become so broken it loops back around to working. This is normal. Second, new features will be added that nobody asked for and everyone will hate. You'll complain, but eventually you'll get used to them, and then complain when they change them again. Third, the user interface will completely change for no apparent reason. Buttons will move, menus will disappear, and at least one critical function will be hidden behind 17 submenus. Fourth, there will be compatibility issues. Some older planets might not support the new physics. Some species might need to download additional DNA to function properly. Fifth, and this is important, there will always be at least one critical bug that somehow made it through testing. When we find it, do not panic. We'll patch it. Eventually. Probably. This is terrifying. Glixnorp had turned a color that suggested he was considering a career change. "This is Tuesday," Gerald corrected. "Well, actually, it's Monday, but spiritually it's Tuesday. The point is, we've prepared as much as we can. We have backups. We have Princess Whiskers. We have coffee. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Princess Whiskers meowed agreement and somehow ordered Universe 3.0 beta survival kits for everyone. They arrived instantly, containing coffee, stress balls shaped like small galaxies, and T-shirts that said, "I survived the update and all I got was this existential crisis. 1 hour until update." The tension in the control room could be cut with a knife, though Gerald's butter knife probably wasn't up to the task. Everyone was at their stations, or at least what they thought were their stations. The furniture had started rearranging itself in preparation. "Final backup status?" Gerald asked. 99.9% complete, the mechanoid reported. "The remaining 0.1% is just Florida. It's being difficult. Florida's always difficult, even in cosmic terms." Gerald checked his watch, which showed times for 17 different dimensions simultaneously. "Okay, everyone remember, when the update starts, do not touch anything. Let it run, even if reality starts looking weird." "Weirder than normal?" Thrintok asked. "Yes, weirder than normal, which for us is saying something." Gerald took his position at the cosmic keyboard. "Princess Whiskers, you ready?" Princess Whiskers had positioned herself on what she'd identified as the optimal spot, a nexus point where 17 different realities converged, and also where the sunbeam was best. She yawned, suggesting she was as ready as she'd ever be. 10 minutes, Yilnax announced, all 6 eyes focused on the countdown. "Remember," Gerald said, "whatever happens, we'll get through it. Humans have survived Windows ME, New Coke, and the finale of Game of Thrones. We can survive anything." "What's Game of Thrones?" Glixnorp asked. "A cautionary tale about what happens when you update without proper planning." Gerald gripped his butter knife. 5 minutes? The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Stars dimmed, planets slowed their rotation, black holes paused their inexorable consumption of matter. Even Princess Whiskers opened one eye, showing the slightest interest in the proceedings. 1 minute! Everyone hold on to something, Gerald shouted. "And remember, if you start experiencing existential dread, that's normal. If you stop experiencing existential dread, that's when we worry." 30 seconds. The cosmic display lit up with warnings, alerts, and at least one pop-up ad for "Single quarks in your area want to bond." 10 seconds. Gerald closed his eyes. 5. Princess Whiskers yawned. 4. Glixnorp's tentacles tied themselves into a knot. 3. The Etherians started raining inside again. 2. The mechanoid played the Windows shutdown sound. 1. Reality ended. And then, like a computer that's been forced to restart during an update, it began again. But differently. Very differently. The first thing Gerald noticed was that he could see colors that didn't exist. Not just new colors, colors that specifically, aggressively, didn't exist. They were there, being colorful, while simultaneously not being there at all. The second thing he noticed was that Princess Whiskers had split into 3 identical cats, each wearing a different tiny hard hat labeled past, present, and future. The third thing he noticed was that the control room now existed in several dimensions simultaneously, creating an effect like looking into a mirror while looking into another mirror, except each reflection showed a different possible outcome of the update. "Status report!" Gerald called out, his voice echoing in ways that suggested it was being heard yesterday, today, and tomorrow simultaneously. "The update is—" The mechanoid paused, his lights flickering through patterns that looked like cosmic dial-up. 35% complete. No wait, 97%. No wait, 12%. No wait. "The percentage is in superposition," Yilnax explained, 2 of her eyes looking at the past, 2 at the future, and 2 very confused about the present. "It's every percentage at once until we observe it." "Then stop observing it," Gerald commanded. "Let it run unobserved." Everyone turned away from the progress bar, which immediately became both more and less complete. "I can taste mathematics." Glixnorp announced, his tentacles now existing in a non-Euclidean configuration that hurt to look at. "That's normal," Gerald lied, because what else could he say? "The update is rewriting the fundamental constants of reality. Some synesthesia is expected." Past Princess Whiskers meowed. "She says the update is proceeding as expected," Yilnax translated. Present Princess Whiskers meowed. "She says there's a critical error in Sector Q7. Future Princess Whiskers meowed. "She says, oh dear, she says in about 30 seconds we're going to have a problem with—" The universe blue screened. Not metaphorically. The entire visible universe turned bright blue with white text that read, "Universe XE has encountered a problem and needs to restart. Error code, cat on keyboard. Please remove cat and press any key to continue." Everyone turned to look at the three versions of Princess Whiskers. "Which one of you sat on the keyboard?" Gerald demanded. Past Princess Whiskers looked innocent. Present Princess Whiskers was actively sitting on the keyboard. Future Princess Whiskers was asleep. "It's present Princess Whiskers," Glixnorp pointed with several tentacles. "But if we remove her," Gerald realized with horror, "we might cause a temporal paradox. Past Princess Whiskers hasn't sat on the keyboard yet, but future Princess Whiskers clearly already has. So what do we do?" Thrintok's crystalline form was resonating at the frequency of panic. Gerald thought for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out something that should not have been there, a cosmic laser pointer he definitely hadn't ordered, but Princess Whiskers definitely had. "We give her something more interesting than the keyboard." He clicked the laser pointer. A dot appeared simultaneously in the past, present, and future. All three Princess Whiskers immediately abandoned the keyboard to chase it. The universe unblue-screened and resumed updating. "Update 50% complete," the mechanoid announced. "New features are being installed. I can see, oh my, I can see everything." "Everything?" Gerald asked, still moving the laser pointer in a pattern that kept all three cats occupied. "Every possible outcome of every possible decision. Do you know how many times you've almost destroyed the universe just by making coffee?" "I don't want to know," Gerald said quickly. "Focus on the update. 60% complete. Multiversal connectivity established. We're now connected to 17 million alternate universes. We're getting friend requests from alternate versions of ourselves." "Ignore them all," Gerald commanded. "Never accept friend requests during an update. It's probably spam." 70% complete. Quantum social media is online. Someone just liked something that won't happen for 3 weeks. Of course they did. And Gerald was sweating now, the laser pointer creating increasingly complex patterns to keep the three time-shifted cats occupied. "What about dark matter functionality?" "Still installing. Wait." The mechanoid's lights flashed in confusion. "It says dark matter is now a subscription service." "A what?" "Dark matter premium. Only 99 cosmic credits per cycle. Includes ad-free gravity, unlimited dark energy, and exclusive access to matter that's even darker." "The universe has microtransactions now?" Gerald nearly dropped the laser pointer in shock. 80% complete," Yilnax reported, her eyes now showing her notifications from 12 different timelines. "I'm getting messages from versions of me that made different choices. One of them became a singer. Another one invented a new type of mathematics, and one of them married Glixnorp." "What?" Glixnorp's tentacles stood on end. 90% complete." The room was shaking now, reality itself groaning under the weight of new features. "Quantum entanglement social features activated. Everyone is now automatically connected to everyone they've ever thought about." Gerald's phone immediately exploded with notifications. His ex-wife, his high school math teacher, that barista he'd had a crush on in college, and somehow, inexplicably, a version of himself from a universe where he'd become a professional yodeler. 95% complete. The three versions of Princess Whiskers suddenly merged back into one cat, who looked supremely satisfied with herself. She was wearing a new collar that said Beta Tester Level 2, and had somehow acquired administrative privileges to reality itself. 97%, 98%, 99%. The progress bar stopped. "Oh, come on!" Gerald shouted at the universe. "Not again!" But this time, instead of freezing, a new message appeared. Universe 3.0 beta requires terms and conditions acceptance. Please read the following 847-293-482-391 page agreement. The document materialized in the air, so massive it had its own gravitational pull. "We have to read all of that?" Glixnorp despaired. "No," Gerald said, already scrolling to the bottom at speeds that violated several laws of physics. "We do what every human does with terms and conditions. We pretend to read it and click accept. But what if we're agreeing to something terrible? We're already in Universe 3.0 beta. How much worse could it get?" Gerald found the bottom of the document, where a checkbox read, "I have read and agree to terms I definitely didn't read." He checked it. "Update complete. Welcome to Universe 3. 0 beta. Warning. Some features may be unstable. Reality may vary. Existence not guaranteed. Have an improbable day." The control room suddenly snapped back to normal, or rather, a new version of normal that was about 15% weirder than the old normal. Is it over?" Thrintok chimed cautiously. Gerald looked around. The cosmic keyboard now had emoji keys. The display showed notifications from 17 million alternate universes. Princess Whiskers had somehow created her own verified social media account with 12 billion followers across multiple realities. And his coffee had transformed into something that existed in 7 dimensions and tasted like the concept of alertness. "The update is complete," he said slowly, "but I don't think anything is ever going to be over again." "What do you mean?" Yilnax asked, though 3 of her eyes were clearly browsing alternate timeline Instagram. "We're connected to infinite versions of ourselves now. Do you have any idea what that means?" Gerald pulled up the multiversal messaging app that had automatically installed itself. "Look, there's a universe where I became president. There's one where I'm made entirely of butter. There's one where humans never invented PowerPoint and society advanced 3,000 years faster." "This is incredible!" Glixnorp exclaimed, his tentacles literally vibrating with excitement. "We can learn from infinite versions of ourselves. Or," Gerald said ominously, "we'll spend all our time comparing ourselves to versions that made better choices and develop crippling multiversal FOMO." As if to prove his point, a notification popped up. "Gerald 6117 just saved his universe in only 3 hours. Click to see how." "I hate it already," Gerald muttered. Princess Whiskers meowed and pulled up her interdimensional shopping app. She'd apparently found a universe where catnip was a form of currency and was attempting to crash their economy by buying all of it. "At least the universe isn't turning into jello," the Etherean offered optimistically. A new notification appeared. Universe 3.0.1 patch available. Fixes critical bug where some universes spontaneously become dessert. Install now? Everyone turned to Gerald. "Don't look at me," he said, backing away from the button. "We just finished this update. Give it at least a week before..." Princess Whiskers jumped on the Install Now button. Patch 3.01 installing. Estimated time unknown. Side effects may include temporary taste inversion, gravity, hiccups, and spontaneous musical numbers. Please remain calm. "Musical numbers?" Gerald shouted, but it was too late. The entire control room burst into song. "We're updating the universe. It's getting pretty weird," Glixnorp sang, his tentacles moving in choreographed harmony. "The cat's in charge of everything, just like we always feared," added Thrintok, chiming in harmony. "I'm just an accountant." Gerald protested in song, unable to stop himself. "This wasn't in my plans. But now you're tech support." Everyone sang together. "For the cosmic expanse." Princess Whiskers conducted with her tail, apparently immune to the musical compulsion, but thoroughly enjoying everyone else's suffering. The song went on for exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, complete with a tap-dancing breakdown from the mechanoid and an interpretive dance solo from the Void Walker that somehow rhymed in 17 dimensions. When it finally ended, everyone stood in shocked silence. "We will never speak of this again," Gerald said firmly. "Agreed," everyone said in unison. "Patch complete. Desert bug fixed. New bug discovered. Tuesdays now. Occasionally skip. Working on solution. Have a musical day. Tuesdays occasionally skip," Gerald read. "What does that mean?" Reality hiccuped. Suddenly it was Wednesday. Where did Tuesday go? Glixnor panicked. "It skipped!" Gerald threw his hands up in exasperation. "The patch fixed one thing and broke another. This is why you don't rush patches. This is why you test in a controlled environment. This is why—" He was interrupted by Princess Whiskers, who had pulled up something on the cosmic display. It was a message from the ancients. "Congratulations on surviving Universe 3.0 Beta. As the first civilization to successfully navigate a major update, you've unlocked Developer Mode. Warning, with great power comes great probability of breaking everything. Use responsibly. P.S. The cat knows what she's doing. Trust the cat." "Developer Mode?" Gerald whispered in horror. "We have Developer Mode?" Princess Whiskers meowed smugly and pulled up a console command prompt that definitely shouldn't exist in reality. She typed, "Give tuna infinite." Suddenly, the control room was filled with cans of tuna from Proxima Centauri. "Your cat," Glixnorp said slowly, "has root access to reality." "Yep, and she's using it to get tuna." "Yep. Aren't you going to stop her?" Gerald looked at Princess Whiskers, who was now wearing a tiny crown that said Reality Administrator, and had given herself opposable thumbs specifically to open tuna cans. "Are you going to tell the cat with God Mode that she can't have tuna?" "Good point." And that's how Gerald Fitzgerald, a 52-year-old accountant from Ohio, became the permanent IT support for the universe, assisted by his cat, who had admin privileges to reality itself. It wasn't the career change he'd planned, but the benefits were good. Unlimited coffee from any dimension, the commute was instantaneous when the teleporter worked, and at least it was never boring. Though he did miss Tuesdays, the ones that didn't skip anyway. The universe, for its part, continued to exist, mostly successfully, with only occasional crashes, regular patches, and the perpetual threat of Princess Whiskers discovering new features to exploit. And somewhere, in a dimension where everything had gone differently, another Gerald Fitzgerald was sitting in his kitchen fighting with his toaster, blissfully unaware of how close he'd come to being the multiverse's tech support. That Gerald's toaster worked perfectly, the bastard. Princess Whiskers meowed one final time, pulling up the multiversal review system. She gave the entire experience 5 stars, but noted, "Update process needs work. Not enough tuna. Will order more universes if tuna situation improves." She had, of course, already ordered 3 backup universes on Amazon, just in case. After all, everyone knows you need backups for your backups. It's the first rule of cosmic IT support. That, and never ever trust an update that promises to fix everything, because in Gerald's experience, both with taxes and now with reality itself, nothing ever really gets fixed. It just gets patched until the next update breaks it again. And somewhere in the cosmic distance, a notification chimed, "Universe 4.0 Alpha now recruiting testers." Gerald pretended he didn't see it. Princess Whiskers had already clicked "Sign up." The cycle continued, as it always does, as it always would. Because if there's one universal constant greater than the speed of light, stronger than gravity, and more reliable than death and taxes, it's this. There's always another update, and it's always worse than the last one. But at least Gerald had coffee. Multidimensional, temporally stable, existentially perfect coffee. It almost made it worth it. Almost. Princess Whiskers meowed in agreement, then ordered 17 more dimensions on Prime Day sale. Nobody tried to stop her. After all, she'd saved the universe by sitting on it. Twice. She'd earned the right to bankrupt Gerald across multiple realities. Besides, the ancients were right about one thing. The cat always knows what she's doing, even when she doesn't, especially when she doesn't. And that, Gerald realized, made her perfectly qualified for IT support. "Welcome to tech support," he muttered, raising his seventh-dimensional coffee in a toast to himself, "where everything's made up and the error messages don't matter." Princess Whiskers purred approval and gave him a notification. "You have 800